We are Gold Ivy, a health company dedicated to simplifying health and wellness. Tune in as we search to find the deep, real, and raw truth. We're here to talk big, no room for small talk. It is our mission to inspire, seek growth, simplify the action steps, and build confidence.
You decide what works for your daily life and how to transform our lessons into your gold. Are you ready to step into your power? Now is the time. Join us on the fearless pursuit of self-discovery and growth.
This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production. We've said goodbye to Tums and upgraded our medicine cabinet to a product that's just as effective, but without the unnecessary inactive ingredients like talc, dyes, and genetically modified substances.
As health coaches and my journey with my gut health, quality of products is extremely important to us. We want to know that what we're putting in our body is helping us, not harming us.
We're so excited to introduce you to Wonderbelly, a digestive health company with a clean, better-for-you antacid with sustainable packaging. Just like us, they're on a mission to destigmatize issues around digestive health.
They have 3 different flavors that literally taste like candy. They have watermelon mint, citrus mint, and strawberry milkshake, with my favorite being the strawberry milkshake. Anything carbonated used to really upset my stomach, and I'm so thrilled to say that Wonderbelly has become my new go-to for relief.
Not only is Wonderbelly better for you, it's also better for the planet. They are 100% plastic-free, their aluminum bottle is fully recyclable, and their packaging is recycled and recyclable. Wonderbelly is committed to happier bellies, healthier people, and a cleaner planet. A mission we can without a doubt get behind.
They've been mentioned in Forbes, TechCrunch, Dieline, and more, and now have our full support. We're so certain that you'll love it just as much as we do that we snagged our listeners a 15% off discount code. Go get your hands on Wonderbelly by visiting wonderbelly.com and enter code GOLDEN15 at checkout.
Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. Thank you so much for tuning in. On today's episode, Holly Margl joined us to discuss her experience with grief and her life-changing book, Witnessing Grief, Inviting Trauma and Loss to Our Coaching Conversations, an Enneagram Perspective. Whether you are a coach or not, Holly's book and this conversation will help you feel more equipped to be present with yourself and others in the midst of grief. Part 1 today covers Holly's experience with grief, what she finds helpful and unhelpful in the midst of grieving, and how important it is to build the skill of presence for ourselves and loved ones. Tune in Thursday for Part 2, where we'll dive more into Holly's story, her helpful practices, and learn more about how our natural tendencies affect our ability to be present. Lastly, we want to warn you that this episode is a highly sensitive topic that includes adult language, and thank Holly for sharing her story and lessons on Ivy Unleashed.
Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. We have an author with us whose book has totally reshaped and made us question everything.
Yep.
Today, we are going to a place that is uncomfortable on purpose.
Yes, today we are talking about grief. Someone with firsthand experience is teaching us how important it is to witness grief. So Holly Margl, welcome to Ivy Unleashed. And can you please tell our listeners a bit about what made you feel compelled to start writing this book?
I've given that a lot of thought since you gave me this page of inquiries here. The very quick answer is going through my own grief, finding out that people don't want to talk about it, especially when it's traumatic grief. And then as a coach, working for not the company we currently work for, a different company, and COVID hit. Coaches were like, well, what do we say to members? And some of the things that I heard were, what does your grief feel like? Or how did they die? And I was about pulling my hair out, like, no, this can't happen. This can't happen. So I offered my help for the coaches, and the person in charge there said, no thanks, we got this. Showed a 7-minute YouTube video to the coaches and said that was enough. So I decided I would quit and write a book.
I love it. And your book, Witnessing Grief, Inviting Trauma and Loss to Our Coaching Conversations, an Enneagram Perspective, is I think a book for everyone. I totally understand that you wrote this for coaches, and I'm happy that you did it for coaches because I'm a coach and we have a lot of people that listen that are coaches. But this book rocked me. I mean, I've had a ton of grief in my life, family members, friends, traumatic losses, young people, old people, and I've completely messed this up. And I know this is your experience with grief, and I want everybody to keep that in mind, that there's no right way, there's no wrong way, but what we want to talk about is like what you have found is helpful, what you have found is not helpful, and in this book, how you truly walk us through what we feel by hearing a really hard story, a traumatic story, of whether it's yours or a made-up story in the book. You invite us to witness our grief. And so I would love for you to kind of just explain what witnessing grief entails.
I'm going to throw that back at you as a question. If you were to think about everything you read, what's your takeaway?
My takeaway first was that the second I started reading something hard where I was getting my heart started pumping, I went and grabbed some ice cream. So I realized like that's how I cope with hearing anything hard is with food. So strange. Mm-hmm. And I felt a lot of like gut unsettling. Like it was definitely down in my gut. I was trying to experience where it was in my body. And I just tried to do what you're saying in the book, because what you talk about a lot is staying with the person, staying present, hearing the details. If I could have, I would have tried looking you in the eye as you were saying things. And just, I got emotional and just staring at you here. It's hard to look you in the eyes knowing what you've been through, honestly. And that's what you challenged us to do, is don't leave, stay, and be with me. And so that was my experience. And I just want to thank you, because that's not what happens in our culture today.
Mm-mm. And my takeaway was I found myself trying to figure out what to say. Wanting to say, okay, if this was someone talking to me, what would I say? What would I say? Instead of just being present, trying to find the right answer. And through reading the book was learning you can't say anything to fix it or to take away the pain. And what they need is that witness, that radical empathy that you talk about. And that's not what's taught in our culture. So it was a lot of, well, shit. We can't outrun grief. Grief is going to hit all of us. And you talk about that in the book too. And I'm grateful that now we're sitting down with you, as hard as it is, and having these uncomfortable conversations is what Ivy Unleashed is all about, because that's where true healing comes from, I think.
So how does that feel to hear other people's experience with your book that you spent so much time writing?
Crazy. I never thought, I know I've sent this to you in emails. I've never thought about this point. It was about writing the book. I mean, I hired a publisher and blah, 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 did all the things, but I never got here. Since Nicholas died, I don't think about the future because he's not in it, So I remember at first I couldn't even go through a whole day, but I think now, like I can look at the end of the summer. The book is launching the end of the summer, so I know that. In between there, I have some tasks to do, but I really don't think much. So it's surprising. I appreciate it, though, because I didn't know. Days before I started sending it out, I'm saying to my publisher, oh, my God, what if people think this is stupid? Wait a minute, some people will think it's stupid. I know some people will not like it. That's fine. But I didn't know what impact it would have. I mean, when you write a book, it's like you're piecing it out. I didn't know.
Yeah, I bet I feel like we could have a whole episode on writing a book and that process, which I'm very intrigued on too. But I kind of want to get you into why the topics of grief and trauma and loss, why it's so difficult for us to talk about.
Great question. What's the answer to that?
That's why we have you here, Holly.
All right, let's all of us get present. What's hard about those things?
No one wants to think about it.
Because?
It's painful. It's uncomfortable.
But why?
Because we don't see it modeled. We see people avoid and distract, and we see when people start to show emotions, they get shut down, especially if they're a boy. And I've seen it in my family, just the the difference, the way that my kids are treated, because I have 2 girls and a boy. And so that's definitely something that I've witnessed, people being uncomfortable with my son's emotions. Big time.
It's kind of like foreign territory because there is no right way to handle it. And I think everyone experiences it differently. And it's kind of like you're walking on thin ice. No one wants to say the wrong thing. They don't know what to say. They also don't even want to acknowledge that this pain happened.
Because what's going to happen if we do? And this was me before 2018. I'm not immune. But like truly, like what did we think would happen? I mean, there's why. There's why I wrote the book. I spent hours and hours with my very closest friend digging into this, like, what is it that humans, why is this so hard? Why can't we talk about this?
And what'd you find? I'm so curious.
So many hours. That people avoid grief at all costs. And I'm talking about relationships we stay in too long, jobs we keep too long, friendships maybe that aren't healthy for us. Pets we keep alive maybe longer than they would want to be alive. And why?
And if you hear a pet,
That's the baby.
we got Yaya up in here. What type of dog is he? We need to have people tune into YouTube right now.
Chow.
He's a Chow Chow. He looks like a king and
We are so happy.
Simba
We are
mixed
so happy
and-
he's here.
So if you hear his little pitter patter.
We hope he gets in a frame. We'll make sure we get at least. Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, Holly, keep going. I just had to acknowledge your little
no.
king here.
That's okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So think about how much we avoid grief, and that's loss. Like people are still living, but we so don't want to feel that kind of pain. What's that about? Man, avoiding pain.
So writing this book, what did you want people to walk away with?
Better understanding how deep it is. It's not something that you go through, you get over, you get past. I think I use the word assimilate in the book. You learn to assimilate it. Yeah, to be more aware of it, just to be more aware. If we're coaching and somebody brings up grief, they brought it up for a reason. Don't pass over it.
Mm-hmm. Could you say the same about anyone bringing it up to you? Outside of coaching worlds?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
Which is why we think anyone listening could greatly, greatly benefit from reading this book because, like you talk about, you can't escape it. It's going to come up no matter, even if it's just, what I found really intriguing was a loss of throughout life. We all experience losses, but no one talks about it, right? Like for me, I think about like the stages of me getting sick and losing my health and now trying to, and like that's grief in itself. COVID is grief in itself. Mm-hmm. Miscarriages is grief. Mm-hmm. So again, anyone can benefit from reading this book. In it, you talk a lot about what not to say.
Well, I do save that for the very end. Is it in the epilogue? All the list of things that people have said, maybe to me, other people, things I've heard. Yeah, my challenge of, I can't imagine what you're going through, which, okay, so that one in itself, I reread Radical Empathy today. Okay, right in there, and she says, it's not about you. Don't try to imagine anyway what it is. It's about understanding, which is interesting because she's saying get in your head. So then I have a question. Okay, where does grief lie? It's in, and I know we're not talking Enneagram yet, but it's our heart center. That's our heart center. But we respond with our head. There's the fix it, the writing reflex to fix it. Mismatch right there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, what is that formula for not trying to be where they are, but understanding they have an experience that's different than mine, and it's okay because it's theirs. It's theirs, and it's real. We have think about that. When you're sick, and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel horrible. But if somebody else is sick, we don't have this. We're not having the experience, so it's easy to pass over it. We have to come back to, hold on a minute. Yeah, I don't even remember that pain that I had when I had that surgery, blah, blah, blah. But I remember I had pain. Now this other person is in pain. It doesn't mean it's not important or it's not there.
Right. And I would love to kind of keep going on this, like what not to say. Because there's so many things that, probably your parents teach you what to say when they take you to a funeral. Mm-hmm. Like, just say I'm sorry and then give them a hug and move on. And in your book, you say, I'm sorry is not appropriate. And so I would love for you to just elaborate on what it's like to hear, I'm sorry when you're grieving.
Well, it's a cop-out. That's what it feels like. It feels like putting up a wall. I'm sorry. I mean, in the end, after hearing it hundreds of times, I really would start to say, you're forgiven. And then see the look on people's face like, wait a minute, what? Okay, I know that nobody means to be dismissive, but it is. It's acknowledging. I get, okay, so it's some sort of validation. You're grieving. It's a platitude. It's what we grew up being told what to say, or we model it, after the adults we grew up with. But do we stop to think about, wait a minute, what do I mean? When I say, I'm sorry for your loss, take it apart. What does it mean?
It doesn't make any sense that we say that, because when you say I'm sorry, it means that you did something.
Usually it's apology.
Right.
I think sorry in this context is sorrow. Again, in my book that I like to look up definitions, I think the root is sorrow. So feeling sorrowful for someone's loss, that's a little bit better. At least it's acknowledging a feeling. Sorrow is a feeling. Sorry is I don't know what is that?
And also it's saying I'm sorrowful, right? Instead of like acknowledging the person that you're talking to.
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry I had to witness this and now I'm uncomfortable. Putting the focus on you. What do you wish people would have said to you?
Well, let's see. I know I put in the book a few things. Many of them were not saying anything at all. It was simply being there. A few times when I was with people physically, it was just putting a hand on my arm and waiting. Just waiting. Can I swear?
Yes.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. See, there you go. So that was my favorite. Mary Longfellow, who I do name in the end of the book. When I sent out the text to, no, it was a friend of mine. I asked her to send text out, but Mary Longfellow sent me a text and all it said was, oh, fuck Holly. It was the best. There was nothing about her in there. It was like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
I also want to go back to a few other things that weren't helpful, like when people say, have a great day, right? Like, well, first of all, I'm not going to have a great day. I'm grieving, but also like, I want you to say in your words why that's not helpful.
If we go back to presence, there's no presence in saying, have a good day. It's just another platitude. So for someone who's struggling, suffering in some sort of pain, to say, have a good day, it's kind of like, do you see me? Do you see me as a human being? No, you don't feel seen. Because why would you say that to someone? I mean, we feel like we have to close every conversation with something. Okay, so let's practice that. So let's say you're talking to, like I was personal training at the time, and I have a client, and I'm done with them, and they're going to move on. What if they just said, I'll see you later?
Or nice to see you.
Yeah.
It was nice to see you today.
Yeah. See, to be honest, that had me rethinking everything during my coaching calls with my clients. Because, they pick up the phone and are they having a bad day? Are they suffering? I don't know until I have this conversation. And normally I say, how are you? And you even talk about that. So I'm like, shit, like, what do I say? Like, it's nice to hear your voice. Or, when we hang up, it's, all right, I look forward to chatting with you next month. It really forces you to pause and think, what actually is appropriate to say? And there's comfort in having those go-to sayings, right? And I with the platitudes as well, it's kind of what I'm thinking. Do you feel like this is just for people who are suffering or not assuming what anyone is going through?
I'm thinking right now, I love this conversation because this is what I wanted the book to do. Just
mission accomplished.
What do we do? We're not present. What percentage of attention or energy are we actually giving to someone when we're with them, even if it's coaching or whatever? Go see the doctor. Truly, how much attention are we giving to anybody at any certain time? Are we thinking about our grocery list or whatever else?
And you talk a lot about presence. You start with that.
The whole book is presence.
Right. And, I think being in the personal development space, meditating and being heavy into exercise and all of this, we are constantly thinking about, okay, how can I be more present? How can I slow down? But for people that are go, or just anyone listening right now, like, what do you want to tell them about why being present is so important?
What's the value of being busy? What's the benefit?
Filling your time, having your mind race.
Feeling like you're productive or you accomplish things.
Bam. So when I ask someone, how does it feel when you say you're going to meditate, you're going to have a presence practice? Where does that land on what's the benefit of it?
Is it to check it off a list, or is it to actually do something, get something from it?
Is it productive? Nope. 100% of the people that I talk to so far, no, it's not productive. That's the problem. It doesn't feel productive. We were to register for a marathon, and then we show up on starting day in our running gear, but we haven't done any running. How's it going to go? Okay, so in those moments that we really need to be present, something big has happened to us. If we don't have a presence practice and we just hope you can breathe a little bit and I'll be present now.
I think about this a lot with reading your book, a lot about my husband and I, because up until the time I started dating him, he hadn't experienced any loss, like not even a grandparent yet. And it was like I had all the training up to this point. So now we've been together for 15 years and I've experienced a lot of loss and some traumatic. And a book like yours is so valuable to help you see what does happen and how can you stay, right? How can you, because when we hear uncomfortable things, we just want to turn the channel. We want to turn the podcast off. We want to switch from a sad song to a happy song, right? And what my question is for everyone is, what is the value of being present versus coasting through life and never having meaning attached to anything, or not truly being there for someone? Like, are you a real friend? If you can't sit with someone and stare them in the eye when their son dies, like, are you the friend someone's going to call when their dog dies? Like, don't you want to be that person? Like, if you're really their friend or the person that they want to lean on, like, you have to be there for those things too, not just the happy things. And so I always struggle with this when I feel like people won't go there that I know. I'm like, what value are you getting out of your relationships then? That's my soapbox.
I have a question. You talk about meditating. I'm curious how you think starting that practice now, like going to the idea of running a race, right? You have to start now and train. How building this presence practice will allow you to be more present in grief, in hard conversations, like kind of how that correlates and why people should build this present muscle right now.
When we're present, we're right in this body right now. Our head is not off somewhere else, or we're not in the past, which is in our heart, and, we're thinking about things. We can only be right here, right now. So even with the three of us, if I'm not present, if I'm thinking about, where did my dog go right now? Like, I'm not here. Mm-hmm. So then if I do a self-check, like, okay, right back, get right back here. Now that I've been at it for a while, I can feel it. Bam, I drop right in. I'm 100%. That's all it takes. Mm-hmm. But it takes practicing it. I mean, a daily practice, and then throughout the day, check in yourself. Because it never becomes a habit. Yeah. It never becomes a habit.
I always tell clients it's like building a muscle.
Yeah. And so to that point, let's say you're strength training, it's going to be painful. You got to tear down the muscle fibers, Okay, when I started meditation 2011, 2012, something like that, I remember sitting there thinking, what the fuck, I suck at this. I can't do this. What am I doing?
I still feel that way.
Yeah. So, and then I remember saying to myself, trust the process. It's no different than exercise. Just trust the process. Set the timer. Do the best you can. That's all it is. You know why? It has to be some big, scary expectation. It doesn't.
You talk a lot about the courage to stay present. And I think that's a really powerful word because it does take courage. Because the first thing that goes through your mind, because you're up here in your head, is, I don't know what to say. What do I say? What should I do? I don't know what to do.
If we're working with someone who's in pre-contemplation, what do we do for them?
Not much. No, just kidding.
You can't force someone to change who doesn't want to change or see the value in changing. You just be with them.
I remember learning about pre-contemplation. That's the I can't and I won't. In those cases, you would say, okay, when you're ready, I'm here. Mm-hmm. Done. Then it's back in their court. Okay, if someone's newly grieving, obviously they're I can't, I won't. Why would we try to say, have you tried yoga? You got to take care of yourself. What are you doing to take care of yourself? Mm-hmm. It's like pre-contemplation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're I can't.
And for those listening who aren't coaches, what Holly's referring to is a model of coaching that talks about when people are ready to change. So stages of change. There's pre-contemplation, there's contemplation, there's action, and there's maintenance. And so that first part is people...
Preparation.
Thank you. Preparation. People don't have any desire to change. So they say that I can't. And so that's what Holly's referring to.
It's not on their radar.
Yes.
It's maybe I remember commonly quitting smoking. That's a tough one. People are like, I can't do it or I won't do it. Okay. It's not on their radar. Mm-hmm. Then we get the I might, the contemplators, I might. That doesn't mean now. 6 months, a year, whenever, I might. That's still, okay, I'm here when you're ready.
Mm-hmm. And I know in your book, and we're kind of alluding to this in lots of different ways, but you talk a lot about not trying to change, improve, or redirect anything, right? And that's kind of what we're saying is that's what we're going to want to do when we're uncomfortable. We're going to want to redirect or improve. We want to fix. We want to help. So I feel like everybody that's listening to this is going to be like, what do we say? What do we do? And the whole point is that you don't.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. That you don't. And so, when I was talking to a few different people about recording this episode, they were all saying the first question is, well, what do I say? What do I do? And it's like, you don't. You don't have to do anything but be there. And you also talk about radical empathy. And so I just love if you could define what radical empathy is and kind of how people could practice that with someone that's grieving.
Yes, and I am going to jump in and say that it also depends on where someone is in their grief process. If it's new, and you don't have to do anything, but rather than asking, what can I do for you, make some food and bring it over. You don't even have to just put it in their freezer. You don't have to give that, you just do. Mm. But don't ask, just do. Okay, radical empathy. Look at I wrote this down. Okay, radical empathy. This is Isabel Wilkerson's book, Cast. Means educating oneself and listening with a humble heart to understand another's experience from their perspective, not as we imagine we would feel. Radical empathy is not about you and what you think you would do in a situation you've never been in and perhaps never will. Instead, it is the kindred connection of deep knowing that opens your spirit to the pain of another as they perceive it. One of the things I want to point out there, this deep knowing, okay, this only happens with presence. If we can be present, we don't have to worry about what to say next because it arrives, because we're just present to this moment.
It's like whatever's meant to come through will come through.
Yeah, we have to trust that's going to show up, but we have to be present. Not, how quickly do you go, what are you going to? Oh my God, what am I going to say next? Especially if you're a coach, you're supposed to say something. Mm-hmm. And early coaching is all about being positive. Oh my gosh. I did just hear that the other day from a coach. Like, I try to end the conversation with something positive, when it was about grief. And I have to try not to pull my hair out. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you I want to punch someone in the face. My son is dead. And you want to say, well, things will get better down the road. Fuck you.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Do you know that? Come and sit. I remember saying that. Sit in my shoes for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, and see what this is like. It's a whole life of this. 5 minutes is unbearable.
Mm-hmm. I love how direct you are with this, and I feel like that's why you wrote it, right? Like, we needed to hear the hard truth about how much it sucks. And there's this long quote I'm going to read from your book that really just resonated with how it feels to be deeply grieving. And you said, there is no off button for the griever and the traumatized. Consequently, they can feel isolated, caught in endless loops of unwanted and sometimes horrific thoughts and memories, and few people willing to listen. However, there is safeness and relief when humanity arrives with strength enough to remain present with the griever's unceasing narratives. When the griever knows distress and despair are welcome, a seed of hope can grow in their hearts when the ebb and flow of responsiveness exists. Do you realize how powerful that is?
Sounds pretty good.
I wonder who wrote that.
I love it. I love that you're number one saying there's no off button to this. I can't turn it off, so don't try and turn it off. Don't try and redirect. It's not going anywhere. I'm still here. I'm still grieving. Like, that sentence alone. And that's even half the sentence. And the fact, too, that there's different types of grief, right? And when there's a traumatic experience, it's even more imperative that you recognize that I'm always going to be grieving. Like, this is not going anywhere. This is not getting better. I'm not going to have a nice day today. Don't tell me to have a nice day. And then I love, too, that you explain grievers do have a sense of hope when they feel that someone is going to be present with them. Like, it is important. And that's why we're talking about it, right? And I don't think it's possible to feel the hope unless if you are actually fully present.
Absolutely. And comfortable in that presence. The times that I'm thinking that came from are the times when I started crying. It was a song. It's still, I can't listen to music anymore unless I want to trigger myself. And it was just people that just, like Mary, take a deep breath. And she just listened to the song that triggered me. It was just safe.
So are you comfortable in your own grief to be walking around anywhere knowing anything can set it off and you will just start crying? Like, do you just keep moving through your day with your tears, or do you try and hide it or distract yourself? Like, what do you do?
Projects are for distracting. I know that. Mm-hmm. No, I don't like to cry in front of people. So I will avoid it at all costs. Sometimes I can't help it, but it's usually, like I might wake up with a song on my mind and then I have to listen to it. The first thing I do in the morning is go running. Sometimes I'm just like doubling over during the run. It's, 4:30 in the morning or whatever, so it's dark out. Nobody sees me doing this, but just like this is the thing. I don't know what people don't get it. Like, I think I have to live this way for the rest of my life. No. Like, truly, people just don't seem to get. It's like, who wants to live a life of pain? And I know, what is it, in chapter 2, I go through all the different losses and whatever, and talk about nowadays the racism and marginalization that's coming up. Man, the stuff that people have to live with that so many of us we take for granted. That's part of it. People take for granted, it's not me, it won't happen to me, or something happens once, it won't happen again.
You do touch on the book that you think people have truly convinced themselves that they're invincible, that like they actually won't either be touched by grief or they think they're going to just be immortal.
Because they don't want to think about it. Why would you? No one wants to put themselves in your shoes.
No. And because it's horrific. We think it's horrific. But let me tell you lose a child and this thought of death is not scary anymore. But yeah, we're scared of it. We don't know what happens.
So what happens in those moments where you're doubling over in pain, you're crying, the loss is like almost too much to bear? Like, what do you say to yourself to even move back into life? This
is a story that I tell members, clients even. I do think it's just part of, okay, first of all, I have 2 other children, and any moment I'm going to have a grandchild. Yay! I remember the triathlon story. Okay. I had swimming-induced pulmonary edema at one of my races. Okay, so didn't know it, but I started the swim, get a couple, I don't know, did I even get 100 meters, 200, I don't know what it was, and I couldn't breathe. So I rolled over, the sun's just coming up, it was in September, and I don't know if I said it out loud, but I said to myself, I got 2 choices. I quit, or I roll over and I figure this out. It's no different. Quitting is just, not quitting a race, it's quitting the whole thing. Or I got to roll over and figure it out. That's it.
And I'm sure sometimes it's just literally second by second of that. Because I bet it feels like a day could go on for eternity when you're in those feelings.
It's a very scary place. The fear is that I'm not going to get out of it.
Yeah. So what coping skills have you had to learn, thinking about having a full-time job and still being a mom? Do you have any go-to skills or things that get you kind of back into those modes that you've been in?
I went back to work after 2 weeks after my son died, and I don't even know how I remember walking in the door, I started crying, thinking, what the hell? But my therapist told me that the only way parents that lose a child learn to assimilate it, my word again, is to find a way to give back. So the sense of purpose, the meaning. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't go looking for this, but I'm well aware that this book has been part of that for me. It's been cathartic to write it. And do you know, really, literally on the drive over here, as I'm still thinking about, why did I write this book? And I put on music on purpose to trigger myself, because that's emotion, and I would avoid that. it's so that Nicholas isn't forgotten.
Mm-hmm. That's so important that you bring that up, because I think people think, oh, don't say their name. You know, don't say Nicholas when you're by her, because that'll make her cry. But in your book, you're like, say his name. The last thing we want is for him to be forgotten. And so your dog's name is symbolic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Your grandson on the way's name
Nicholas.
is going to be Nicholas.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think that's so important to kind of talk about that. Can you talk about why it's so important to say the name, bring them up?
Yeah, we had with George Floyd. We had to say the name, say his name. I would have never known that until afterward. There is such a fear that they're going to be forgotten. I don't know. It's every parent that loses a child will tell you this. There's such a deep fear they're going to be forgotten. A very wonderful woman named Jessica Dibb, who I've studied with for the past year. She was a teacher. And she also read my book. She's working on her own book. Fast forward, she decided her book is about breath work. Mm. She has included a chapter about me and Nicholas in the story because of the way he died, and it is the respiratory system. Mm. So there's another way. So anyway, I'm telling Joey, look at this. Jessica's included this chapter, whatever. And he's like, what does that mean, Mom? And I said, it means Nicholas is going to be remembered even farther. He's stretching even farther. Mm-hmm. He's like, she sounds like a pretty amazing woman. Right.
Well, and this is going to air, and we have 50 different countries that listen to Ivy.
Oh, my gosh. You guys rock.
So Nicholas is going to be all over. Let's just talk about him for a minute. Like, what was he like? I know in your book you talk about him, but it'd be great for you to just tell our listeners a bit about Nicholas.
Wow. Okay, so that's going to trigger.
Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I can do that. What do I want to say about Nicholas? You know, I spoke to him the night he died, just a couple hours before he died, because he wasn't doing so well. He was away at school in New York. And one of the things we talked about were tattoos. And I had said, I want a sleeve. And he knew that I wanted a sleeve. But I said, but I haven't decided what I'm going to get yet. And Nicholas got his first tattoo before he was 18. So a friend of his gave him a really horrible outline tattoo. Okay, it was 4 honus, which is Hawaiian green sea turtle. Long history with Hawaii. But it represented me and Benjamin and Joey and Nicholas. Then when he was 18, he got this tattoo, which is very faded, but it's pink plumeria with my lei. So it's a lei. So he got this tattoo, even with pink flowers. He thought it should be the family tattoo. Then my dad died, and I got this tattoo, which is a drawing my dad did like 30 years ago on a napkin that I saved, and his signature. So Nicholas got a tattoo with my dad's name, and it is a stingray with a honu in it, like tribal. So when he died, I knew that I had to get a sleeve, and that the key features were 4 honus, so a better version of what he had. And stingray, because stingray is there. He also always wanted a kraken on his back, so we have the octopus here, which is 5th grade. Which this little thing here was already for my boys, that it was a sun with a blue swirl in it. But anyway, yeah, so we had those things in common, that he wanted a future. He was gonna come home for his internship at Christmas time. He was in school to be a chef. So he was gonna make key lime pie for my dad, because it was gonna be our first holidays without my dad. But he struggled with that. He struggled with his grandpa's death.
Because it was the same year.
Yeah, it was about 18 weeks before Nicholas died. So that story is, on the day my dad died, I was having a party for Nicholas, who was going away to school. And he graduated from high school early. So graduation, going away party. On his way to our house, my dad stopped to help a stranger get his car at a snowbank and had a heart attack. So we didn't have the party. We were at the hospital. Grandpa died. I gave that eulogy, and I had Nicholas on one side of me and my Uncle Stan, my dad's brother, on the other side. 3 weeks later, Nicholas went to school. We took him to school, and then, yeah, he died there 4.5 months later. And, you know, he loved life. You know, here's the thing. You know Anthony Bourdain? Have either of you seen that new show? Roadrunner? Nicholas and Anthony Bourdain were very, very similar. And, if we get into personalities, same. just full of life. People love Nicholas. His whole life, all of his teachers, he was teacher's pet. Truly, from kindergarten on, everybody loved him. He loved going to school. He loved, I don't even know. I can't even meant a lot. Like I think about shortly before he left for New York, I guess. He came home one night, and he's big. He was big. He was my large child. And that's what I called him, large child. And he called me birth giver. He came in the house and he sounded like an elephant. He comes running the stairs. He's like, "What's up?" It was just his thing. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget. And then I'm like, "Why can't I leave my house? Because I have that staircase, He's just like, this is the stuff, all right? So you get me started. This is what people don't understand. Like, this is all that's left. Mm-hmm. It's all that's left.
And he's here with us, too.
Yeah. Well, okay, yes, and this goes with me when I get the tattoos, and his cremains are in ink.
Mm. Oh, very cool.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, still, I talked to somebody recently who had a death. I think it was his mother. And he said to me, it just doesn't seem real. Absolutely. You get these moments where you're like, can't be true. I'm going to wake up. I still think I'm going to wake up sometimes. Like this just can't be
like
true.
Unfathomable.
Yeah. Can't. Because my brain would explode. Mm-hmm. Surely I cannot endure this.
It's got to be like a self-protective mechanism that's just keeping you...
I think so.
From your head exploding, probably. Yeah.
What's it like talking to people who are grieving when that does hit so close to home? Do you find it therapeutic? Is it tough? What's that like for you?
Great question. I can be present with them. I love my members that are grieving. And I do share my story about Nicholas in those cases because it's instant rapport. Mm-hmm. And they can just tell me whatever, and it's A-okay, anything. Or, I can share some of my, what it was like for me, and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't think anybody else knew that. And like I put in the book, I have a neighbor who had cancer. She's, I don't know, some people don't like the cancer survivor thing, so I don't know how to, I want to be respectful of that.
Mm-hmm.
But she told me that the only place she felt that she belonged was in the oncologist waiting room. Because everybody else there were, questions. How are you? What are you doing? Where is your cancer? What kind of cancer? Blah, 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 what's your prognosis? There's just none of this stupid questions. Like, what? Oh, and I did just have somebody recently ask, can I ask how he died?
Yes, please, let's talk about this. Is it appropriate to ask someone how their loved one died?
Come on now. Who's that question for? Does the griever need to know how their loved one died?
No.
Put it away. Fucking A. And especially if it's traumatic and it's something that comes with judgment or, like that label. Mm-hmm. They don't want it.
Right.
It's not appropriate. That's for the person it's not the griever.
I like how you said, like, put your own curiosity aside because that's all you're serving is your own curiosity. It's not important. If you're talking to the person that's grieving, that is the last thing they need to talk through. Like, I have had a lot of suicide in my family and friends back from my hometown. And anytime I say that, people want to know how each of them killed themselves. And it's like, how is that helpful for me to walk through in any capacity? You are just curious. And I totally get it. Go ask someone else that's removed from the situation. But also, it's irrelevant.
It is.
The person's gone. So how do you handle that when someone asks you that?
Depends on the situation. That happened to be a member that asked that. And I will say an accident. Mm-hmm. It was an accident. That's all I'll say. Sometimes if I'm irritable, I'll say, you can ask. I'm not going to answer.
Do you ever say, can I coach you why that's unhelpful right now? Can I just give you some unsolicited advice?
No, usually because I just want to say, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is where this is going. No. Why not? And going back to, what's your son's name?
Yeah. Is it okay to ask, do you want to talk about him?
No, I wouldn't ask. I would just say, I would love to hear about him. if you ever want to share anything.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is helpful. I am trying to be empathetic to the people listening that have never experienced loss and their parents sucked at like modeling this for them. Like this book is so great because you're going to get this book and then you're going to have some examples of scenarios that you're going to hear that are hard to listen to hear the details of, and it's intentional. And I know I kind of already talked about how I went and grabbed ice cream, but I feel like you don't know, like you have to be present with yourself in this book to figure out what's happening in my body, what's happening to my eyes, where am I looking? Am I trying to get out of this chair? Like, and you have really good prompts of how to keep the reader there.
Thank you.
The inner witnessing. So let's touch on that. When you talk about the inner witness, what does that mean?
Well, we can't be present without it. We have to be able to hold the mirror up to ourselves. There's another thing we avoid doing as human beings, to truly look at the ugly stuff. Be truthful with ourselves. Yeah, I do that thing. Ooh.
You say your inner witness is an unbiased mirror. Is that possible, though, to be unbiased?
Why not?
I don't know. I feel like I'm always biased.
Like against yourself?
Well, with all our conditioning, like, is it possible, do your best, but I hope I could be unbiased.
I think it takes the desire to want to do it.
Yes.
Right? So many people, I don't want to look in my closet.
The unbiased comes from if you're present, if all you are is right here, right now, in this body. That's another conversation itself. If that's all there is, where's the judgment? And who's here? Who's here? If you're right now, you are just in your body. Who's here? I know I'm blowing your minds, right?
That's deep shit.
How do you do that? How do you do that work to figure out who that is and who you want to come? Can that be changed?
That's a long process.
We're getting real deep here.
But that's a big question. So yeah, who's curious? Who's looking? There's the inner witness. Okay, so you're present. There's no judgment because what the heck? I'm just here. My ass is in this chair. It's sweaty, whatever. That's just it. Whatever. And then I can say that because they're going to judge. That's somebody else's deal. This is what's happening for me right now. That's just the truth. I could judge it, but I'm just noticing. I'm honest with people, especially the first year or two after Nicholas died. And people say, "How are you today?" Well, my son's dead. So how do you think I am? Yeah, people don't want that. Why the heck do we say stupid things when we really don't want the answer? We're just not present. We're just not.
It's conditioned. It's automatic.
It's easy.
I feel this call to action for everyone listening is that presence is needed. It's important that you prioritize it because you're going to need it. And you want to think that you're never going to need it, but you're going to need it. The closest people in your life are going to die. And this sounds depressing. Sure, you want uplifting shit. Like, this is not the moment. The moment right now is to understand that you need to gain these skills because your people are going to need you. And you're going to have to witness your own grief the way that Holly has, where it's like, I can't escape this. Like, I can't escape it. And so building these skills could save your life, could save somebody else's life.
So for anyone listening who wants to better witness their inner self and help others along the way with grief, please highly recommend going and getting Holly's book, Witnessing Grief, Inviting Trauma and Loss to Our Coaching Conversations, an Enneagram Perspective. Holly, where can they find your book?
Amazon.
Amazon.
It's as far as I know, it's Kindle and paperback, and everybody should buy it on the 30th of August and for 99 cents. And then
99 cents.
Write a review, even if you just say Holly's great, or say something good, because then I can get on the bestseller list.
Yes.
Yeah.
99 cents. I love it. Let's support authors. Let's support people that are trying to help the world and help each other out. I think your book is such a gift to the world, whether you want to face the tough conversations or not, whether you're afraid to be present or not. Get courageous. Get this book, sit with your feelings. You might have to get some ice cream like me. It's totally fine. No judgment here. But start figuring out what happens in your body, what happens in your mind, what happens to you when you hear these traumatic stories, and how can you start to practice that?
What happens in your heart?
Happens in your heart. Totally. And we just want to thank you for writing this book, because it's helped us grow so much. I mean, we can't stop talking about, like, it's a question on a question. It's a thought on a thought. It's getting deeper and deeper, and talking with you, my mind is blown. I'm going to have to listen to this back like 62 times, but I'm just thankful that you went here, right? Like, you had the most traumatic experience and went to work with it to provide value to the world, right? And to help people not have to hear these stupid comments and questions that we're just so unaware. And your book is going to create a movement of people showing up differently and being there for the loved ones and for themselves too. So thank you so much for writing this.
I don't know what to say to that. It's overwhelming. Again, didn't think about getting to this point. I want to not be present right now. I just want to check out. It's a little uncomfortable. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for your enthusiasm.
You're welcome.